Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Short Hops with Wichita Wingnuts manager Kevin Hooper. Short Hops is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Wichita manager questions about the Wingnuts, baseball, or sports in general, or just seek Kevin's wisdom about life events or whatever may be on your mind this week. This week, Kevin answers some questions for us related to Major League Baseball. He talks to us a little bit about what's going on with the Wingnuts and plans that he has for the team so far as the offseason is going on. Kevin also talks a little bit of football with us, and he shares his idea of whether he'd be willing to take money to be bossed around by a woman. So let's get right to Short Hops. So we'd like to welcome back manager Kevin Hooper this week. Kevin, let's first of all begin with some team updates from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always, Robert. Nothing too crazy, kind of a slow period. We actually started the process of speaking to a couple guys here and there and just trying to get them re-signed for next year. Like I said, this is kind of that stage of where guys are deciding if they're going to retire, that type of thing. You know, maybe get on, as we say, into the real world. You know, it's funny. I get calls from employers every off season because I'm on a lot of people's reference list of them getting into the real world and getting a real job. But you know, I talk about with that a lot of businesses I've come to find out like athletes, especially baseball players, because our game is such a game of failure, and there's so much adversity that you deal with. And, you know, I always talk about baseball being a lot like life. You know, you can learn a lot of things with the game. But anyhow, back to the subject, we've just been talking to a couple guys here and there and starting that process of trying to re-sign a couple guys. You know, here pretty quick, I think after Thanksgiving, we'll start cranking out pretty good.
Now, I had looked out in the Can-Am League and seen that you guys are not playing Can-Am League teams this season.
That is correct. No more interleague play with the Can-Am League, so, which is okay with me. You know, honestly, it was fun. It was fun for us because usually we went out when we did take that trip out east. We went during the NBC tournament where we have to be gone for the 2 weeks anyway. So it was kind of a change of pace for us, which we enjoyed, going to some new places like this last year, getting to go to Quebec and Ottawa. Ottawa was a place where I actually got to play in AAA, and it was neat to go back there and be a part of that again. But you know, it's okay because, like I mentioned before as well, I think that scheduling is tough. It's tough to make it fair with the schedule to where all those American Association teams are playing the Can-Am teams equally. And I know only 5 teams go out there every year, and pretty much it's usually the teams that can afford it. So your lower income teams would never make that trip. So, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, I still believe it wasn't quite fair playing that interleague in the way we scheduled it. So I'm okay with it. We'll go to a 12-team league in our league, and it'll be a very strong league, I believe.
So you guys are not going to be then including, like I saw they were getting like a Cuban national team and that independent Japanese team is coming. That's not going to happen in the American Association then? No,
that won't happen. No.
Okay.
You know what? And I think somebody made a point that I heard this last week that, you know, out of all the indie leagues, we're the only league that has never had a traveling team. And I think that says something about our league, how strong it's been, and, you know, we've been able to withhold and stand strong with the teams that we've had and the agreements that we've had with the teams in this league. It's become very strong.
That's nice. Excellent. Well, let's get right to our fan questions this week. So first of all, we begin with Steve from Manitoba, who asks, if you had to get Bryce Harper out with the game on the line, who would you choose from the bullpen? Justin Dowdy, Dustin Pease, or Nick Walters? And then congrats on the success over the years, he says.
I appreciate the congrats, Steve. It means a lot. And what a question. I tell you, Steve seems to be very in tune with what's going on, and I really like that with some of the questions he gives. That, you talk about a tough question. Those are 3 pretty dominant lefties that we've had. Dowdy was a closer for us, and then Pease and Walter were left-handed specialists. If anyone wants to look up their numbers and what they did in Wichita, is pretty special. So I think I'd have to flip a coin and go with Pease or Walters just because of their deception. I'm talking lefties. I know Walters one year, I think lefties hit like .080 or something off of him. It was crazy. And Pease was the same way. Both of them kind of threw across their body from the left side and were very, very tough on left-handers. And Pease ended up signing out of here, you know, getting another opportunity after he left here. So I'd say that'd be a toss-up between Pease and Walters, and that takes nothing away from Dowdy. Dowdy was just kind of an overpowering lefty who threw a little harder, had a really good curveball. So, to be honest, I'd be comfortable going with any of those three, but I think in a pinch it'd be Pease or Walters.
Excellent. Benny from Andover asks, I know Joplin was kind of a thorn in your team's side this last season. Do you think you will have much more success against them now that you've had a season to examine how the Joplin Blasters manager manages games now?
Yeah, Benny, we had a tough time with those guys this year for whatever reason. There always seems to be a team every year that you maybe struggle with and has your number. I still felt like we matched up against them really well. They just played well against us and had our number this last year. Carlos Lascano was their manager, a guy who's well-respected, been around the game a long time. Him and I have a really good relationship. I think there's a mutual respect there on how we manage. He tries to do things the right way as I do, and he mentioned one time with me that he loved playing us because he knew that we would play the game the right way, and he wouldn't have to worry about any sideshow things going on or whatnot. So that was good to hear from him, and same thing for me. I know that he's going to manage the game well, and you're never going to have too many issues with guys like that. But I think that they're revamping their roster quite a bit. I think financially, I don't know how solid they are, and I think that maybe they're just trying to save some money and go with a little lower payroll. So we might see some new faces, and it varies so much year to year. But yeah, we definitely will have a feel of Carlos and the way he manages. He likes to play small ball early on. He's not afraid to bunt a guy over and get a guy in scoring position right away. So there'll be another tough division foe come up here in the 2016 season.
Plus, the closer they had last year had ridiculous numbers.
Really, really good. Yeah, Abreu, former big leaguer. Yeah, very, very tough. Very tough.
Lewis from Wichita would like to know, what do you expect will happen this year with your closers situation?
Lewis, that's been kind of a revolving door for us year in and year out, it seems. This year we've got Navarez to start, and he's dominating, and he ends up going to Mexico. Then we purchased Dakota Watts from Grand Prairie, who dominates as well, and he ends up getting signed. And then fortunately we were able to get a hold of a guy, Paul Smythe, from the Atlantic League, and he did really well for us as well. So, Smythe is kind of on the fence, I think, right now of whether he's going to continue to play or move on with his life. But I actually spoke to him this week and told him, if he's wanting to play, he's got a job here. So there's a chance that it could be Smythe, another guy. Derek Idle is another guy who has a possibility. You look at his career numbers, and he's had a wonderful career and has had some experience there at the tail end of the game. So I think we've got some options in house, just kind of depending on what's going to happen with these guys and who decides to do what. And like I said, we'll just make adjustments accordingly.
Our next question comes.
And you know what? Our closer for 2016, Robert. Sorry, our closer for this upcoming season. Maybe we don't even know about him yet, or a lot of stuff happens with releases come spring training, and you're always making adjustments with the roster. But I do feel we've got a couple guys on our roster that could have that role for us.
Well, I'm sure that you'll come up with somebody. You always have. Actually, the last 2 years you wound up having 3 different guys who closed out games because of signings and things.
Yeah, it's like I said, it seems to be one of those positions that it's a revolving door where either we end up losing guys that get signed or guys going to Mexico. Any part of that, we end up, it seems, going through a lot of closers. But we've had a lot of success, too, of replacing those guys and being able to find a guy, and we work hard at going out and doing so.
Our next question comes from Lucky from Wichita, who asks, I've seen lots of teams exercise a bunch of options on players for this upcoming season, but I've not seen that occur with the Wichita Wingnuts. Do you not have a lot of contracts to exercise options on, or are you waiting to exercise those options?
Lucky, we've exercised everybody's option. After I read this question, I actually went on the American Association website and looked at transactions. And if you go back to September 14th, you'll see Wichita, and we exercised the option of everybody we had on our roster there at the end of the season. So that's kind of how we do it. We exercise everybody's right at the end of the season, all on one sheet, get them all done at the same time, and move on with things. So we picked up everybody's options, so everybody's under control again for another year. Obviously, not all those guys will be back. We'll still end up possibly trading some of those guys, maybe even releasing some of those guys, and some of those guys will end up retiring.
Kevin did that on my birthday as kind of a present to me.
Oh, there you go.
Abraham from Derby asks, I know you get to find and sign your own players, but are also you involved in the whole process of signing, I guess, like contracts and everything that go along with that? Like, do you negotiate the money aspect of it with them as well and actually sign them to the contract?
Very good question, Abraham. Yeah. It's I'm involved in all of that. I pretty much do all of it. Josh Robertson, our GM, he might have one or two guys just with his relationships in the game. He used to work with Kansas City Royals, so if we have a Royals guy that he finds out about, he might do the signing of one of those guys. But I do the majority. He is the final say with the money. We always compare it. I'm sure many of you have heard me compare our roster to a puzzle, and it's just like building a puzzle. You know, we have a formula that we use with our salary cap, and everybody's got to fit. And you know, I know money's tough for guys sometimes, and it's always a puzzle. Determine on what we're going to pay a guy, and you got to get some. You know, you're going to overpay some guys, and then that means you got to get some guys on the cheaper end of things. So it's kind of a mix, but yes, I am involved, Abraham, in every aspect of that.
Carlo from Wichita would like to know, he's heard you talk on the show about when you were a player, how you would kind of look down on independent baseball, and wonders why it was that you decided to play for Wichita then.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I really looked down on indie ball. I just maybe wasn't well educated of indie ball. You know, you always heard guys talk when you were playing about, you know, just indie ball being kind of the lower ranks and guys that don't have jobs. And obviously when you're in affiliated ball, no one wants to do that because that means you're out of a job in affiliated ball. So, you know, I don't know if I really looked down on it. It's just somewhere maybe, you know, you really weren't interested in being because you want to be in affiliated ball and you want to be in the big leagues. But, you know, the easy answer for that with the Wingnuts is this is home for me. And to be able to play in front of the home crowd night in and night out and play in front of a lot of people who hadn't seen me play since college ball, and to be able to play in front of my family every single night, that was a big reason. That was a big reason I finished my career here and was happy to do so.
Excellent. Steve from Steve from Lincoln would like to ask, Lincoln has made a lot of releases so far. Do you think this team is really going to struggle this season, or will they benefit by making these moves to help them to get back to the championship series?
Now, Lincoln's always seem to put together a good squad. Obi Ken Oberthel, I've known real well. He actually managed against me when I was still playing in AAA when he was with the Mets. So we go back a ways, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful manager with, you know, big league experience coaching wise. And to have a guy like that in our league is, you know, it's pretty special to have some veteran type guys like that in our league and be managing in our league. It gives our league a good name having guys like that, big name guys like that. So, you know, they're going to do a good job, and, you know, they always put together a good staff. Obi puts together a good staff. I know they work real hard. That stadium's unbelievable. It's where the University of Nebraska plays there at Haymarket Park, and it's a major league surface. That infield there is a big league surface. That's how good that field is. I know they win, you know, field of the year every year. They win the surface of the year in our league. I don't know how many years in a row they've won it, but they'll be fine. They'll be fine. I look at them to, you know, maybe bounce back, and I think that that's probably why they're making all those moves, because they scuffled a little bit and just trying to clean up some trash and maybe, you know, brush the dust off and try to bring in some new faces and some new life to that organization.
They're a little bit different, if I understand this correctly, than most of the other teams in that Ken Oberfeld and Charlie Myers actually worked together to build that roster. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're right. You're right. I think Charlie does quite a bit with that, actually. And I think, you know, Obi relies on his staff as well to do a lot of that. And I think Obi is getting a little more involved in it and wants to. But, you know, there's a lot of hard work by a lot of people to build that roster there. I do know that.
Okay, interesting. Our next question comes from a guy identifying himself as Braves fan, who says the Atlanta Braves seem to be surrendering the next season after dealing their closer, and he hears that they want to deal Freeman as well. This used to be such a proud franchise. What happened to them?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to them. You know, Jonathan Sherholtz, the young one, I actually played against him in the minor leagues, and I still continue to keep in contact with him because he's head of the minor leagues over there with the Braves. And, obviously his daddy had a big part to do with all the stuff that went down when they were so good. So, a lot of teams end up doing that, where they're going to sell some of their higher name guys and try to get some prospects and just build for the future. And maybe that's the time for Atlanta, because you do see it a lot in major leagues where a team has maybe scuffled a little bit, whether it be for a year or two, then they decide they're just going to kind of regroup and sign some young guys and try to build from within the franchise. And I think that's what's happening, where, they're going to get a lot of young guys in these deals and try to make them into, well, I'm sure they're prospects already, and they're going to try to make them into some career big league guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they end up doing, because, like I said, you end up seeing a lot of teams do this. But you also look at the Royals from years back. I mean, they weren't really that great there for a while, and look what they've become.
Plus, Atlanta moving into a new stadium, I believe, in a couple of years too.
Yes, I heard. Yeah, I think that you're right.
Our next question comes from Tyler from Rose Hill, who would like to know, you talked about your friendship with Curtis Granderson, so he was wondering how Granderson is feeling following the World Series.
I think that they're awful proud of what they were able to achieve. I know I've said it many times, Grandy's not just a wonderful baseball player, but even a better person. And happy to call him a friend of mine, and I've built the relationship I have with him. But, he actually had thumb surgery. I don't know if you saw that. He underwent some thumb surgery after the season, and I just spoke to him through text after the surgery, just telling him I hope surgery went well, and congrats on another great season. And he said his surgery went great. So, like I said, I think that they're pretty happy with what they were able to accomplish, and I think that it's going to be a bright future there in New York with all that young pitching they have.
I always liked him as a player when he came out in Detroit, but never really liked him in a Yankee uniform, so I'm glad he's across town here. So. Right. Miguel from Wichita would like to know, as a former shortstop, how do you think this Carlos Correa will progress as a player?
I tell you what, this kid's going to be pretty special, I think. This guy can do it all. Who he reminds me of is a young A-Rod. When A-Rod was back at shortstop, Correa's got some size to him. He's got some big power in his bat. I think that's a pretty good comparison as far as I'm concerned when A-Rod was younger, because A-Rod had some power. He was a bigger guy, a bigger shortstop, and that's how Correa is. And it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to stay at shortstop with how big he is, because a lot of those guys end up moving to the corners one way or another. But from what I saw and what I've heard, he's going to be able to handle it just fine, and he's definitely going to progress and be something special to watch. One of those young kids in the game that's going to be a lot of fun to watch for many years.
There are so many guys now that you think about that are really outstanding shortstops now, with Tulowitzki and Simons, and this guy's right up there. I mean, his name is just.
Oh yeah. To do what he did as a rookie, and to be so young. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. It'll be fun to follow his career and see what happens with him.
Philip from Mays asks, do you assign an off-season workout program that you ask your players to follow during the winter?
Very good question, Philip. We don't have a set off-season program that we do, just because, like I said, at this level, you don't know who you're going to retain the next year. The guys know. I mean, the guys know what kind of shape they need to be in, and especially us, we're a little different, just having such a long layoff in between. With our season only being 4 months and spring training only being 12 days, it's a short period of time, and these guys know that they have to be ready when they come into spring training. Or else they're probably not going to last, because we only get to 12 days, and they need to be in game shape pretty much, because we go right into playing games in spring training and then roll right into the season. So we do not have a set off-season program. I've spent a lot of times in the past, though, talking with guys about stuff I used to do and stuff I believe in. And certain guys, especially speed guys, just talking about some things that they can do to refine their skills and work those fast switch muscles and become the best they can become when they show up the next year.
Kevin, I'm curious, not singling any player by name out or anything, but because of the fact that this is a professional setting, so I would assume you expect guys to know what they need to do to be in shape, especially since they only have 9 or 10 days of spring training, so they need to know what they need to do, and so I assume that you approach this like, hey, I don't need to be standing over you asking what you're doing. You should know what you need to do.
Absolutely, and that's what I tell them all the time. I'm not here to babysit anybody. This is a professional level, and guys have been around. Now, the young guys you might talk to a little more, and I think that those young guys, though, lean on a lot of those other older guys, too, that have those off-season routines. And I'm sure amongst the guys, there's a lot of trading of workouts and stuff that goes on during the off-season because I've come across a lot of guys who love to work out and love conditioning and whatnot, and have come up with some good programs on their own throughout the years.
Are there places, I'm just kind of curious, where guys can go and work out with other guys? Like, I remember when I was in high school, a couple of times I had gone to batting cages to kind of, get ready for high school baseball season, and like Cliff Johnson and guys like that would be at those batting cages with other Oakland A's players getting ready to go to spring training, kind of thing. They would kind of gather together to start getting themselves ready. Do they do that at a lot of places?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of guys that when I speak to them in the off season, they end up working out with a lot of other players. I think that that's pretty common, where guys are working out with other pro players in their facility in their hometown, especially guys that live in some bigger towns where there's a lot of pro guys there. And to be honest, that's how I've gotten a lot of guys. Guys that have played for me or that continue to play for me that maybe work out with one guy and he ends up being a free agent. We pretty much get a jump start on that guy because of his relationship with our player.
Interesting. Another question from Philip is, do you keep track of how your players are doing in things like winter ball?
Absolutely. Yeah, we absolutely do. We try to stay on top of that any way we can. And I know I've talked about Jose Amato, our hitting coach. He's really involved in the winter ball scene. He's got a lot of connections with Venezuela, Mexico, Dominican, any of those leagues, Puerto Rico. There's always guys looking for guys to play winter ball. So we have a nice little list that we compile of our guys that are interested in continue playing in the winter. And whenever those guys get that opportunity, we definitely keep track of them.
Simon from Hayesville would like to know, with the way that you help players to get to affiliate ball, do you find that those players will then send guys to you who are being cut by organizations that they think would be a good fit for your team?
Absolutely. And that's what's so nice about it, too, getting so many guys signed, as many guys as we've had, because those guys love their time here and they spread the word. Anytime a guy gets released from their team, I get phone calls all the time or texts all the time during the off season, especially once spring training comes rolling around, of guys that they played with that end up getting released that they think could help us. And to be honest, sometimes the best recruiter for me is the guys that play for me, and buddies of theirs or guys that they've played with in an organization that end up getting released.
We head to some NFL questions for this week. The first one of them is, with Manning injured, the Broncos struggling, and the Chiefs playing really well of late, were we premature in calling for their early season funeral? This Chiefs fan once again. So,
my man, Chiefs fan, always good to hear from you, week in and week out. Yeah, I'm not so sure, buddy. I was saying the same thing, because now they're 4-5 after being 1-5, so they've rattled off 3 in a row. They looked really good yesterday against Denver. I know Peyton struggled quite a bit with the injury, and, there's just not a whole lot on the ball right now from him, and I know he's battled some injuries throughout, but the Chiefs looked really good yesterday, and I hope that they can continue. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue the momentum and see how many wins they can rattle off and see if they can't make a run at this thing.
I think we do want to say congratulations, though, to Peyton Manning on catching the all-time NFL record.
Absolutely. That's pretty special.
Absolutely. NFL fan asks, do you think a guy like Tom Brady can play football until he is 46 or 47 years old?
Well, I know we talked about this last week with him saying that he wanted to continue to play another 10 years. I'm not sure. I hope. I love watching him. I know I stated it on here, too, the passion out of that man. I mean, just yesterday I had that tight game with the Giants, and they ended up kicking a field goal at the end. He's just so passionate. You can see the fire in him and just the way he carries himself and acts. And I love it. I absolutely love it. So, yeah, me personally, I hope that he will continue to play for quite some time, because as we stated before, he's 38 right now, and he hasn't lost a step or skipped a beat one bit. It's fun to watch week in and week out what he's capable of doing and what that team's capable of doing.
Boy, it really seems to be in phenomenal shape. Without a doubt.
He definitely takes care of himself, no doubt.
Doug from Benton asks of you, Kevin, come on now. Odell Beckham made that catch in the end zone yesterday. Don't you agree? How is that not a catch?
Yeah, Doug, I was watching it live, and I thought the same thing. It's crazy, the rule. You know, I think what it came down to is when that second foot was coming down that he started to smack the ball out of Odell's hands. That's my only reasoning, I guess. I thought the foot came down, though, before he knocked it out. So it's tough. It's tough. It's real tough. And I know we have the Calvin Johnson rule where if you're going to the ground, you can't hit the ground and lose the ball, which is crazy to me, too, because here you are, you catch the ball across the goal line and take 2 steps. As far as I'm concerned, it's a touchdown. But, you know, they've become pretty stingy with those rules. But I thought the same thing right away. I thought Odell, I thought that was going to be a touchdown and ended up overturning it.
You know, if some fan out there knows if this is true or not, this is a part that I'm kind of a little curious about. If there's a rule out there that sets what specifically is a football move, I'd really like to see that, because I don't really get that aspect of things, to be honest with you. So there's a rule out there.
Yeah, Robert, and how many times do you hear him? You're right. How many times do you hear him say that throughout a weekend? You know, he wasn't making a football move, or he was making a football move. Well, what's a football move?
Yeah, so I'd like to know.
You said, yeah.
I'm curious about that. Gary from Wichita would like to know, do you see Andy Dalton finally getting some respect this season?
Yeah, he's played really, really well. I'm actually watching the games on in the background right now. It's a tight one here with Houston. They're up 6-3 as we speak. But, you know, to be undefeated and doing what they're doing, I know they've had a hard time in the postseason in the past. And, you know, he's played really well this year, And you hope that it can continue. He's another guy that I think carries himself pretty well. Seems like a good teammate and a guy that you pull for. So, another interesting, you know, run here towards the NFL season and come playoff time. It's always a fun time of year.
Kevin and I believe that Andy Dalton is going to be great because he's a redhead.
So he's a redhead. That's
most
right.
Important. Chet from Wichita would like to know, Kevin, give us a top 5 power ranking so far in the NFL.
All right, here you go. I got to go the Patriots, obviously, number 1. I'll go Carolina, number 2, who's been tremendous. Cam Newton's been really, really good. Then I'll go Cincy, number 3. They're still undefeated. We'll see what happens after tonight's game. And then I'm going to go Arizona, number 4. Cardinals have played really well, and they look pretty good all around. And then number 5, I think, has been a surprise for everybody. George might like this, the Minnesota Vikings. So George up in St. Paul, that is, George Samus. So those are my 5. Patriots, Panthers, Bengals, Cardinals, Vikings. Those are my top 5 as of today.
Can't argue with that top 5 at all. Chet would also like to know how your fantasy football team is doing.
You know what, Chet? I have 3 leagues that I play in. I kind of cap it at 3. I know a lot of guys who play in about 10 of them, but there's no way I could keep track. I have a hard enough time keeping track of 3 of them. So I am 8-2 after this week. I'll be in one of them, so doing really well in that one. And then I will be 6-4 in another one. And then we always do one with the Wingnuts, typically our staff and then some of the players. And it looks like I'm going to end up winning this week, so I'm trying to make a strong run here at the end, and I'm going to be 4-6 after this week, so I pretty much got to win out in that one. So doing okay. 2 of them doing pretty well, and then the Wingnut one is going to be a challenge to win out and see if I can't make a run at the playoffs. So to be determined, I guess I should say, Chet. We'll check in here in a couple of weeks and let you know.
Excellent. Our last question from Shelley from Wichita asks, I see there is an app out there called Manservant where women can pay $125 an hour to boss around really good-looking men. Would you let a woman boss you around for $125 an hour?
This is a good one, Shelley. I had no idea of this app. I think that is pretty humorous, just reading the question. I'll tell you what, I get bossed around for free around this old household. So
I know that feeling.
That's just part of the gig, I guess, from the wife being the husband, which I have no issues with. And I always tell her, hey, I'll make the money, you spend it however you want. So that's kind of how our things work here at this household, because I don't need a whole lot. I want to be around my wife and kids, and as long as I got time with that, she can spend the money however she wants. But I tell you what, Shelly, I might post this app up in the clubhouse and let all of our single players maybe make some extra money, because they're always looking for a way to make some extra money. So maybe this would be a good little off-season job for some of those guys. So, Shelly, thanks for making me aware of the app, and like I said, maybe I can give them some business with some of our studly single players that we got here in Wichita.
That's a great idea. Well, Kevin, thank you for joining us this week.
Thanks as always, Robert. We'll see you next week.
All right, bye. We want to thank manager Kevin Hooper for joining us on Short Hops this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Wichita Wingnuts manager, please send them to us at askkevin@minorleaguesportsupport.com. That's askkevin@minorleaguesportsupport.com. Please have your questions to us by Sunday evening so we can give Kevin a little time to review those questions before we record our show Monday night. I want to thank you again for joining us this week. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll see you next week on Short Hops.